Good day. How's that? Good
That's
day.
good. Good day. Yes.
They know
Hello.
it's day because the
Hello.
sunshine behind no windows. So they know it's not nighttime.
No, it's not nighttime. That's okay. It's
Your clock is not behind you, so they don't know what time
no,
it is.
I moved because of the glare. I don't want anything to infringe upon the beautiful video of you and me here.
I don't think anyone on earth is going to call it a beautiful video of you and
Probably.
me.
How you doing, big boy?
So we do our podcast last week, and
Who
as
knew
happened,
that O.J. Simpson was on the cusp of death?
well, you know what? What the nice thing he said, and I thought this was great. He said he's going to ask God, or at least I think he said he was going to ask God to tell him who really murdered his wife.
Right. Yeah. God, hopefully, God or the devil will tell him who the real killers were. So, O.J. Simpson has a particular sort of connection to you and me specifically because you became very good friends with Mr. Francis Lee Bailey later
Yeah.
on in his life after he moved to Maine. So, therefore, I was guilty by association because we had Lee on the show a couple of times,
Yeah, it
and
was great.
he, when you would have your Fourth of July party or a gathering at your place, everybody would congregate, of course, around F. Lee Bailey. And what would come up
Yeah,
as a topic?
he was a great storyteller. And of course I called him Flea and he did not like that. I thought it was quite clever of me to call him Flea Bailey. And he said, yeah, don't call me Flea Bailey.
Right.
But what was great about Lee Bailey, we'll get to OJ in a minute, is that he told you which ones of his clients were guilty. I mean, he didn't say, yeah, all my clients are innocent. Patty Hearst, he said, yeah, that was a get back of her old man. She knew
Right.
exactly what she was doing. She wasn't she wasn't a Stockholm victim, that kind of
Stockholm syndrome, really?
thing.
So she was totally into what she was doing? Wow.
Bentley. Although she was locked in a closet for like 79 days and raped repeatedly. I'm not sure
Wow.
I agree with his assessment, but anyway, he said the Boston Strangler was the most evil man he had ever met in his entire life. He said
Raymond DeSalvo.
this man was pure evil. He said he probably raped and murdered 3,000 women.
Holy mackerel.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
sickening.
So, but yeah,
Right, so
OJ, and by the way, as you know, he says OJ was innocent.
he wrote a book about it, did he not?
He did.
And he
And not the how I killed her if I killed her. He didn't write that.
right. All right. So did you believe what F. Lee Bailey said that OJ
You
was
know,
not
I mean,
guilty?
I got it. Like I said, he told you when his clients were guilty. So his thesis was that Faye Resnick, who was Nicole Simpson's best friend, was the intended victim, and that she was into the Colombian cartel for hundreds of thousands of dollars, and the Colombian cartel did the necklace. That's how they executed people. And then when they found out they killed the wrong person, they got killed. Whoever killed Faye Resnick, and that was that. It was just a bad killing.
Do you believe that? He
You know,
said,
OJ's behavior was a little bizarre.
little bizarre. Now there's at least 11 911 calls from their house over time from Nicole when OJ was beating up on her, when OJ was freaking out, when
It
OJ
was
was
clearly abusive,
an abuse prick.
but that's different than that's
That's
different.
circumstantial. I got you. Circumstantial
And
evidence.
remember, the state has to prove beyond a reasonable doubt. Now, the mistakes that Marcia Clark and Chris Darden did during that trial,
Benny,
well, just horrendous. And you had the dream team of attorneys; they were pretty damn good. Um,
they're great. Nobody's better at creating doubt than Johnny Cochran and F. Lee Bailey and Robert Shapiro and even Kardashian, who felt that OJ was guilty
yeah.
and was stunned when the verdict was announced. If you see Robert Kardashian's face becomes ashen. So the dream team did their job, but the
And
prosecution.
by the way, to add OJ, I mean Flea said that he goaded Chris Darden into having OJ from the flag.
Love. Yeah.
And as you know, and he said, first of all, blood shrinks leather.
Right. And he
Right?
had rubber gloves on.
Yeah. And he said, on top of that,
Yes. Chris Darden is a mental midget.
and he kept passing that. He says, I dare you to do this. You don't have the balls to do that. And he just
won the case, Ken. That won the case.
Yeah, and of course, if they don't fit, you must have quit. And he also said, and this was Lee Bailey said, listen, how many times did OJ fumble in his college and pro career? He had hands like basketballs. He never dropped the ball. He says these hands were huge. So they knew that the Bloods were going to reach it. But of course, Chris Darden was an idiot, and Marcia Clark. And then, that was the most, and the judge was horrible. It was a horrible case. But I guess at the end of the day, I'm going to go with Lee Bailey on it.
Ken. What's your wife think?
Oh, she thinks he's guilty.
Okay. All right. I feel better then. Because I think you and your circle, Rob and all your friends, I think you just like having F. Lee Bailey as a buddy, and you were kissing his ass. Me, I don't give a fuck. So I told him, and I remember Lee on the air calling me like the dumbest man in America, which is fine.
He said,
I'll die on that hill. When it comes
down, he said to you, he said, "Well, you did not see all the evidence that I saw."
I know.
Oh, I'm gonna go with Lee, not because he's my friend, but he's dead, by the way.
God rest his soul, but I'm not going with you, Lee, my friend. I'm going with OJ is guilty, and the real killer has been found, and he ain't in heaven.
All right, so let's go into Dennis Deschaine now.
My God, he's back.
It's pretty interesting, and I was reading. I mean, they've had many. He's had other chances of, he's been turned down. This is the second time I think he's requested a new trial. Now, according to the latest allegations, there were 3 items of clothing that his DNA could not be attached to. They included the young girl's bra, a bandana used to gag her, and a stick used to violate her. There was no DNA. They couldn't find any DNA of that. But they were inconclusive on her blood-stained T-shirt, a scarf used to strangle her, and another stick. So what does that mean? Look, you would think that his DNA, there would be DNA on all those items that was his. Now, look, I've had a lot of conversations with a lot of people in the courthouse. One of the marshals who watched the whole trial, who I have a lot of respect for, I think he's since passed away, but he was a court officer for 40 years. He said there was no doubt in his mind, no doubt that Dennis Deschaine was guilty. Period. End.
And so there's that viewpoint, and then there's the viewpoint of the federal investigator Bob Moore, who wrote a book on this, who we had on the show, and who I've spent some time with. And I can't remember the name of the book, but he, on the other hand, was completely convinced that it was not Dennis Deschaine and that it was somebody else. So, all right, we've got those 2 differing viewpoints. My point all along is I think there's always been enough doubt here that Deschaine deserved a new trial.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to get one. Now, Carl Bradford, who was the
judge, 66 now. I mean, Jesus.
Yeah, I mean, Carl Bradford, I thought there was some stubbornness involved in not considering a new trial, because I think there was enough of, 20 years ago or 15 years ago or 10 years ago. And I think he was a little stubborn to let the verdict stick. On the other hand, don't you want to be sure? But, how do you prove it now? I mean, we have new advances. DNA is more advanced and stuff. The fact that there's no DNA on 3 articles and inconclusive on 3. But, his defense was, I was doing drugs in the woods and somebody planted the evidence in my truck. Not the best defense in the world.
I mean, do we have any suspects there? I mean, did Dennis Deschaine wrong somebody so badly in his life that they framed him for what seems to be the spontaneous murder of a 12-year-old who just happened to be there?
No. His theory is the murderer chanced upon his truck, which was near the victim's house. So this was an opportunity to get rid of their evidence by putting it in somebody's truck.
Right.
It's a reach. And you're right. He's 66 years old right now. I mean,
yeah, he's been in prison for what, 40 years?
Yeah.
That doesn't mean, I mean, I can't imagine being wrongfully convicted if he was, and is having to serve. He wouldn't be the first, but to be the frustration has to be unbelievable. I can't imagine.
Not to get your ire up, but he's not the typical color of somebody wrongfully convicted of a crime. There's not a lot of white men in prison who are
Right.
wrongfully convicted. Let's be
Right,
honest.
and that's true, and that's a valid point. But of course, the crime occurred here in Lily White, Maine, and I'm sure the jury was all white, and
Absolutely.
so
Yeah,
back.
I'm not. I, I use when you and I talked about this on the show, I agreed that I think we should retry, but that was a while ago, and I think too much time has passed. I'm too much, eyewitnesses,
Moved off that.
investigators. A lot of those people are not around anymore. So
I think I called him Bob Moore. The investigator was Jim Moore that I was referring to.
Jim Moore,
Uh,
Bob Moore. I mean,
look,
Jim
I'm
Bob.
I'm still. It's a man's life, and I think again there's enough circumstantial doubt that he should have a retrial. But man, 60s.
Yeah,
I mean, all I can think about is Shawshank when Brooks came out of prison and he couldn't handle it and he hung himself.
yeah.
And then Red, of course, had the invitation and some cash to go to Mexico. Fort Hancock, Texas.
There you go. Well done. Nice movie. Great
Yeah,
movie. Great
great,
movie.
one of the all-time greats.
All right,
So
can we talk about the legislature a little bit?
yeah.
Where do you want to start?
Well, let's see. They passed the popular vote thing,
Yeah.
and Janet Mills, absolutely spineless, didn't sign it. Either you're for it or you're against
You
it.
can be
As
no,
a
no, no,
governor,
no,
not
no,
to
no, no,
sign
no.
shit, that
You,
is
why
spineless.
can't you be neutral?
You can't, nobody's neutral, Ken. Nobody, even Sweden's not neutral anymore.
Hey, NPR. NPR is not evidently, an editor
Nobody's
quit. An editor quit because he said that NPR had a liberal bias. I didn't know that. What I think so funny is that NPR doesn't know it has a liberal bias.
Well,
Okay,
the funny thing is that we fund them and they have no shred of being fair. And that's
well,
ridiculous.
that's
And
because they're right. They don't have to be fair.
Howie Carr calls them National Panhandler Radio.
Anyway, getting back to what you said, yeah, I hear you, but there's a lot of people who do pocket vetoes or do laws that go and do without being signed. Who
So
cares?
what does it all mean? I don't
Well, so the compact is if you get states with 270 electoral votes,
yep.
and they have all passed legislation that says whoever wins the national popular vote gets our electoral votes, that would mean that the popular vote would then prevail because you'd have 270 electoral votes. We'll see. I think Maine brings it to 210, maybe. So
They also reached as the session got right towards the end there, and I think it ended at like 6 o'clock this morning, seriously, because I saw some posts on social media. They did not vote on the red flag law in the end.
and
And
it's interesting. One of the victim's sisters, a social worker who spoke against the red flag law.
yeah.
I mean, what she said was, a longer waiting period, extensive background checks, those work fine. We don't need the red flag law. I don't. I would do. I'm not a fan of guns. I know that's a shock to you. I would do everything and anything I could to make it harder for mentally ill people to get guns. And I think I trust cops. I'm not worried about cops coming and taking guns away from law-abiding citizens. I just don't think that happens. I don't, that's such a minority. I mean, I just don't think it happens. And I think the red flag law allows for more and more faster intervention. So I don't understand.
When it comes to the shootings in Lewiston with Card, the the laws are in place and have been in place.
Agreed.
People do not choose to act on them, and if
Agreed.
that's the way it's going to be, we can legislate this from now until the cows come home. And if people aren't going to speak up, the army I mean, the guy's on video for crying out loud, talking about what he might possibly do, and then he comes and does it. So again, I think the laws are already on the books. I don't think we need to do any more. I think everybody needs to grow a spine, and it's better to err on the side of caution when it
I
comes
agree. I agree.
especially now with guns as readily available as they are, and I'm fine with that. But if we have laws on the books, use them.
Yep. Oh, I agree. And those huge failures, I think I stuck with the Army, and I think the officers involved who relied on the family, that was a ridiculous thing to do. And you're right.
They're the
Democratic
last people
law
you
firms.
should do. They're the last people you should rely on because
Yeah,
you're too close.
yeah,
You're too
I agree.
close.
I
It's
agree.
it's way too close. So one more thing about the legislature, and that was the Portland Sea Dogs had a there was a bill not proposed by them, but the Sea Dogs had a bill to get tax breaks in order to get Hadlock Field up to Major League Baseball standards. Now, keep in mind, Hadlock Field is owned by the city of Portland, not by the
Yeah.
new owners of the Sea Dogs, who, by the way, are Diamond Baseball Holdings. The Burke family doesn't own them anymore. They sold to Diamond Baseball Holdings. So they need what is apparently $8 to $10 million in upgrades to get Hadlock up to snuff to Major League Baseball standards. And Troy Jackson sponsored the bill
Yeah.
to give them tax breaks. Now, I
And
did a
the
little
tax breaks were going to be $2 million. It was not going to be the whole
right,
bill.
right, $2 million, which is $2 million. So it didn't take much research on Google to find out, and I knew they were worth a lot. Diamond Baseball Holdings is an LLC that's owned by a bunch of hedge fund guys. It's worth $70 billion,
Yeah.
and
But if we
they
don't do the tax breaks, what happens? That's the question.
they're not
Are
going to
you
leave.
willing to, are you willing to lose the Sea Dogs?
They're not going to leave. And
Well, are
again,
you
who
sure?
loves baseball more than me, and who loves the Sea Dogs more than me? The Sea Dogs are a gem. They may be the best minor league franchise in
I agree.
America
I agree.
in minor league sports. It's a cash cow there. All right. They're not going anywhere. The affiliation with the Red Sox has been brilliant. It works. The place is full every single ball game. They played this afternoon to almost a full house as we record this on Thursday afternoon. Where are they going to go?
Well, you could have somebody come in and offer a large amount of money to move them to their location. I mean, that is possible. So, you're always taking that risk that somebody will say, look, we'll pay you $50 million to come to Toledo, Ohio. Well, they have the mud hens.
And who's the we? The we is the taxpayers, and there are teams all over the country who are always looking for government, i.e., people, for a tax break for infrastructure, for tax breaks on building a new stadium, all that stuff. The Raiders got all of that stuff to build their stadium in Las Vegas. Now the A's, who want to move from Oakland to Las Vegas, are looking for that. And I forget which city it was recently that just flat out. Oh, it was Kansas City. The Chiefs had gone and had a legislator propose tax breaks and stuff. The people voted it down.
Well, they got some crazy little women there.
Huh?
They got some crazy little women.
They got some great barbecue too.
I understand that should the state of Maine be financing this tax break when it's
corporate welfare?
Yeah, I think sometimes there's lost leadership and you just do it. And I would not take a chance that the Sea Dogs would be grabbed by somebody else. I don't know what the Red Sox, I don't know what Double Diamond would do. But when you talk about the state budget, $2 million is really
I
not.
know, but once we start throwing around $2 million here and
It's a slippery slope argument. I get it. Slippery slope argument. I get it.
Is the Trump trial on court TV or what?
Donald Trump's having a trial.
Yeah, you're not going to believe this. He's been charged with stuff.
Yeah, this was the weakest charge of the. I mean, this was the weakest charge of the lot. But well, I think he's guilty of it. By the way, don't get me wrong. He did use campaign money to pay off this woman. I mean, that's illegal. But finding a jury. I mean, you're gonna have. I mean, I've seen jurors who said, well. Of course, the Mike Violet way of getting out of a jury is I can know somebody's guilty just by looking at them.
I've used that before and it worked.
But
that's it. I don't have any superpowers. That's one of them, Ken.
And you only need one person to say not guilty to tie up a jury. So, finding 1 out of 12 people who is secretly a Trump supporter and comes in and I mean, if I was a Trump supporter, and I was called to that jury, I'd say, I can be unbiased. I don't have any strong feelings with the other. That's what I would do. And
forget about the jurors. Let's talk about the judge who has donated money to Joe Biden more than once. The judge who's donated money to George Soros. I mean, the prosecutor who clearly is a partisan left-wing hack. Trump, he's not a sympathetic figure, but you know what? Geez, come on.
But all prosecutors and judges are political. I mean,
And that, and I guess you can't get away from that now.
can't you can't. I mean, look at the judge down in the document case down in Florida, who's is a Trump appointee, and she's making ridiculous rulings in Trump's favor. But you know what? That's the way it goes. That's the
So if
judge
Trump,
that got the case.
so if some of these charges stick and Trump is guilty or whatever, um, he has no criminal record. These are nonviolent crimes. You would think it would be a no-brainer that he wouldn't go to jail, but of course, there's the partisan hackery side of the whole thing. So
It's going to be that would be hard to put him in jail about a fight.
I was going to say, so what I was going to ask you was, say some of the charges stuck and he got convicted, and then in November he got elected president of the United States. Would they have to wait until he was done in 4 years?
So the interesting thing is, so they wouldn't jail him, but I don't think being convicted of a crime. The only way you get rid of a president who gets elected is an impeachment and conviction. If he murdered somebody in Times Square, he can still be elected president. I do not believe that there's, other than causing an insurrection, which under the 14th Amendment arguably disqualifies you. Was it the 12th Amendment? Whatever the amendment is, disqualifies you. But then again, who makes that decision, right? Who says, yes, you were part of insurrection, you can't be president anymore? That would have to be the Supreme Court, in my opinion, or Congress, which is not going to do it. So what does it matter? Although the PR train could gather steam, the more that he gets charged, the more he gets convicted. I think the January 6th charges are the most significant charges, and proving that you created an insurrection or participated is a high bar. I think he did. I know you disagree with me, but I think he absolutely did. But I don't think he could get convicted of it. But maybe in Washington, D.C., he could get convicted of it.
You know what? And we didn't plan this, and I'm dropping this on you as a surprise here. We have not talked since we started. This is what, our third podcast. We haven't talked about Elliot Cutler.
Yes.
Elliot Cutler was a friend of the show. Elliot Cutler was.
Do you remember when he called the show? Because I said, I've decided I'm going to endorse Elliot Cutler. And he was listening to the show and he called in and you said, Mr. Elliot, I like you a lot. I'm not really yet, politics. I'm still on the conservative side. He said, Mike, our umbrella is big enough to, we welcome you into us anytime you change your mind.
And I have to, and so, I mean, obviously no one had an idea of the kiddie porn activity that was going on, not even Mrs. Cutler. We didn't know that he was a pervert. Yeah. So having said what you just said, Elliot was gracious to us. He took my good-natured barbs, calling him old barn jacket, saying he had the worst haircut in the gubernatorial race.
It's true.
He was always nice and engaging to us, had time for us. So, I mean, this happened.
He missed being governor by 1.5 percentage points.
No kidding. So who did I hear from first when this came out? Guess.
Who?
Dennis Bailey.
Who?
Dennis Bailey. Dennis Bailey, the creator of the Cutler Files. Remember that?
I know.
All
well,
right,
but none of this was in the Cutler Files. But
no.
And I told you he wrote a letter of apology, and I sent a copy to you, didn't I?
You did, yeah, you did.
He sent us, and it was a blanket letter, but he wrote a personal message on it. And it's like, wow,
Right. It's like an alcoholic that's going through the 12 steps of AA. You've got to go back and atone for your sins with people.
You didn't
send me a goddamn letter, though. Where's my letter?
Well, you didn't contribute to his campaign, which I did. Here's the problem. Pedophilia is absolutely a disease and a sickness, but it's an incurable disease and sickness, and it causes.
He's going on the Ken and Mike Island.
There you go.
The infamous Ken and Mike Island.
Have each other. Put them on an island. Let them gang rape each other.
Let them absolutely do what you guys want to do to each other. But
that was the most shocking thing I ever heard. I mean, if you had told me that he was a pedophile, I would have said, yeah, no.
I texted Paul LePage when that story came out, and he thought I was kidding.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
Oh,
Yeah.
you just never know. I mean, I hate to go out on a pedophilia note, but
No, no, but one thing before we go out, we lost a great one. We lost
yes,
one.
Dickey Betts
He
is
was a
gone.
phenomenal guitar player. And of course, the Allman Brothers, which had some real tragedy. Dwayne Allman, of course, died in 72, I think, in a car
Motorcycle.
accident. And then another member of the original band died the next year.
Greg
Same,
married,
yeah,
Greg married Cher, all kinds of tragedies.
yeah, everybody in that group died fairly quickly, live fast, die young, stay pretty.
Now, did you see them in concert?
I never saw the Allman Brothers. Never saw them.
Me neither.
You know.
Me neither.
And Greg Allman was a peculiar. I mean, married Cher, and then he kind of
They had a kid, Elijah Blue. Didn't
like,
he
yeah.
go to the Hyde School in Bath?
Oh,
I believe he
really?
did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he cleaned up his act for Cher, but the problem is some people do much better on drugs than sober. I hate to say that. I mean, Bonnie Raitt. I saw Bonnie Raitt in concert in 1970, 1971, when she was a drop dead alcoholic. She couldn't stand. I mean, she'd have to sit down. One of the greatest women slide guitarists you'll ever see. She was
Well,
so. No, I'm not saying when she got sober she wasn't talented, but it's amazing what some people can do. I
can
got
you imagine the drugs that the Allman Brothers, aside from the drinking, but just the sex and drugs and rock and roll must have been masterful.
pretty.
Just something you can't even, I think the Rolling Stones would aspire to do some of the stuff the Allman Brothers did.
Uh,
And
uh,
yet, and
the
yet
only
Keith
person,
Richards lives on.
the only person I saw more drunk than Bonnie Raitt in concert was Gordon Lightfoot. He fell off his chair. He was on the stage in Ann Arbor playing the guitar, and he fell down. He was that drunk, passed
I
out.
saw Van Morrison very drunk at the Orpheum in Boston.
He's Irish. Come on.
One of the worst performances I've ever seen. And also, I saw Eric Clapton at the Augusta Civic Center, so friggin' fucked up on heroin. This was during his
Yeah,
heroin days.
yeah, absolutely.
Muddy Waters opened for him, and Muddy had to come out and salvage the show. It was that
It's
bad.
amazing. It's amazing that generation of 60s and 70s music and how anybody. I mean, look at Mick Jagger. How's he and Keith Richards alive? I mean,
Now, Jagger actually has lived a pretty clean life here the last 30 years or so. I mean,
that's true.
he's still in great shape. They're going out on tour again, Ken.
Oh, by the way, I had dinner with BB Buell,
You
uh,
did.
who's really very delightful. I have to
You can
tell you.
tell a story or two.
Yeah, and she said, "Oh, last month I saw Mick in some hotel in New York City," and she goes, "Oh, he's just this tiny little man now. He's shrunk like by 6 inches, and he's this tiny little man." But great. Oh yeah, she has a lot of stories to tell.
Oh
Yes.
my God, she sure does. I have a story to tell about her daughter, Liv Tyler, who went to school with your daughter, Amy.
And spent many a night at our house.
Yeah. So I after you broke my marriage up and I got divorced, I needed
I
a
put
second.
asunder what God put together.
I took on a second job parking cars at the Mexican restaurant
Oh, that was
there,
great. That's over the Nam.
Zapoteca.
Okay.
Zapoteca. So I was parking cars there, and there's pretty high scale, people coming in there, and this Volvo station wagon drives up, and it's dark and it's winter and it's cold, and I'm standing there, and I see this car drive up, and I walk over, and this incredibly tall, absolutely gorgeous young woman gets out, and it's Liv Tyler. She and her mom. She was at her mom's in Yarmouth,
Yeah.
and her mom had some old Volvo. So Liv gets out. She's standing there. I walk up. Her mom is taking her time to get out of the car, and I didn't want to. I mean, I obviously knew it was Liv Tyler, and I walked up to her and I just went, "Are you Liv Tyler?" And she just goes, and she winked at me. That's it. She tipped me $20. So I am
She's
forever
a
indebted.
lovely person. And when Amy was in school, Liv Tyler would spend the night here. And gawky kid, really. She
Grew
was
out of it.
tall, grew out of it. Of course, she thought Todd Rundgren was her father until she saw her real father in concert and noticed how. And in fact, she invited Amy to go to that concert with her. And we didn't let Amy go because they were going to go down by themselves. That's not a good
Not a
idea.
good idea.
And they looked at each other and it was like, you look just like me. Actually what she said was, her half sister that he had with another woman
Yeah.
was a twin. Looked
Yes.
just like her. That's kind of what clued in. Lovely girl, and I love BB. BB has great stories to tell. She's
Boy,
fascinating.
yeah, there's someone who you got to get her to come to the 4th of July party next year so we can.
Well, I will tell you, we were having dinner with Rob Baldacci, Rob and Beth Baldacci, and Rob said to her, "You got to come to Ken's 4th of July party." And let me tell you what else. She and Linda were like the Banger sisters. I mean, they were like two. I mean, they would not stop talking to each other. They were like best friends instantly.
That could be a Thelma and Louise situation right there, Ken.
There
Look
you
out.
go. There you go. Well, good. Fly off the
All right, I
cliff.
can't wait for the 4th.
All right, buddy. So we'll see you next week. I'm sure there's gonna be somebody's gonna die in a half hour after we turn off the podcast, but we can't keep this going all the time just to catch all.
No, I'd like to keep it going 24/7, 365, but I'd have to go to the bathroom. I'd have to pee.
Buddy, have a great week, and I'll see you next Wednesday, okay?
Take care, my friend.
Take care. So long.